Today, we are going to be talking about one of the most exciting headphone amplifiers that I have been able to test out yet this year. So let's get into it. What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today we're taking a look at the Enleum HPA-23RM. Now, this is a reference headphone amplifier, hence the R, that is also mobile, hence the M. Now, it retails in at $2,999, and I want to send a big thank you to Enleum, who did provide me with this headphone amplifier in exchange for all of my honest thoughts and my honest opinions. And guys, I will sadly be sending this back by the time I have finished uploading this video to my channel. All right, so the 23RM, as we will refer to it, is a beautifully designed and machined headphone amplifier. And I want to kind of take you through the aesthetics and build first. We'll go through the inputs and outputs, and then we'll talk technical specifications. So starting with the amp, I mean, just looking at this, the machining on here is exquisite. Everything is intricately designed. I don't find any kind of flaws in the unit at all. It's got heft to it. It just has that premium feel, and you can tell they put a lot of thought into the design of this. On the sides, you're gonna notice these are actually heat sinks so that they disperse heat really well on the amplifier. All right, so starting with the back of the amplifier, you're gonna notice there is a 1/8 analog input. There's a set of RCA inputs, and then you're gonna see your USB-C input. This is to charge the amplifier, also to leave it plugged in so that you can power this as a desktop solution. Going around to the front of the amp then, you're going to notice the gain switch, low and high. I love that clicky feel of that. And then you're going to notice a 3.5 voltage output and then a 6.3 current output. Those are separate amplifier outputs, by the way. We'll talk about that here in a second. Then you're going to notice an LED charge status. This will let you know obviously the charge status of the amplifier, also if you're going to leave it plugged in. And then you're going to notice the volume pot. And there is some precise machining here once again, so it is very easy to grip and to turn up and to turn off. I just love the click of the volume pot. And there is a short delay when you turn that on as well, which a lot of amplifiers will do. All right, so as we talk about the technical details of this amplifier, I don't want to get too far into the nitty-gritty details of the weeds of all the technology, but there are some definite important things to note. Now, the first thing is the Essence module that is inside this amplifier is very like the Essence module that is in the 23R big brother or big boy amp of this amplifier. So what that means is that it does incorporate all discrete transistors with zero negative feedback, ultra fast response. I can definitely attest to that when I listen to this amplifier for what that does. Now, moving on to the voltage output and the current output. As I said, those are two different amplifiers in one, and really each one is taking a nod from a predecessor before. So the voltage output is really from the 23R, again, big boy amplifier of this. Now, the voltage output of this amplifier does do about 500 milliwatts at 30 ohms. And then the current output is really from the HPA-21, for those of you that have been following along with the Enleum amplifiers. Now, the current output will do 1 watt total out. Now, don't look at those numbers as face values and move on from that, because there is a lot more going on there as we explain that with how it pairs two different headphones. The really quick nugget I can give you there is that the current output will really take into account the impedance of your headphone, of your IEM when you plug it in, whereas the voltage output does not. Voltage is just the voltage that you're getting out. Current, again, will take that impedance into account to decide the amount of gain that you're going to get when you plug in that headphone or IEM. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, but we'll explain that more when we get into headphone pairings. All right, and so the battery is basically an advanced battery circuit. And now it is a descendant of legacy items such as the BPS-01 and the HPA-21. It is a much more efficient battery. They've been able to reduce the number of batteries that they put inside the amplifier. What that all means for you, the user, is that you're going to get about 5 hours out of the voltage output and about 3.5 hours out of the current output. Now, obviously, If you're doing a mix of both, if you're doing high volume, if you're doing high gain, all of those things can take into account how much time and how much uptime you're going to get on that battery. But just know it is a very efficient battery that they have implemented into the device. And then there's the solid state relay attenuator, aka the volume pot as we know it. It is very precise, and it does incorporate a resistor array system so that when you are turning it up and down, you are going to hear little clicks in the volume. Now, this is completely normal. I know my RU7 from Cayin that I have has a resistor relay system, and at certain points of the volume, there'll be pauses in the music. Well, this does little clicks as you're going up and down. So don't worry about that. That's just the very efficient circuitry doing its thing and the attenuator doing its thing. And it does it so very well with ultra low noise floor, which I highly appreciate. Excellent volume pot or attenuator that they have incorporated into the 23RM. All right, guys. So now that I've kind of muscled my way through the technical specs of the amp, you probably want to know how it sounds. And I got to tell you, this thing sounds good. Damn good. Let's talk about that next. All right, and so I think it's important to note my test setup for everything that I use with this amplifier so you kind of understand. Actually, really quick, guys, this is my time to tell you, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so now. Shooting for 5,000 by the end of 2024. And I have a Patreon, by the way, if you want to support the channel there as well. All right, so I use with my test setup my Bifrost 264 as my desktop DAC. I also had on hand at the time the Mojo 2 that I use for a portable DAC. I also have my RU7 that I've used as a portable DAC for this device. I listen through Tidal streaming service, high-res files, FLAC files. I have my own FLAC files, and that is pretty much my entire setup through my Windows PC. What I want to start with is just give you a general overview of the sound between the voltage output and the current output. Starting with voltage first, I can tell you that it is a very full sound. It has excellent impact to notes. It has excellent details. I mean, every amp I have listened to prior to this that I have owned has not had this level of details out of my headphones, sadly enough. And I say sadly enough because I love my HA-3A. This has more details even than that amplifier can produce. And this is portable. Also, the staging out of the voltage output is very wide and spacious. It just gives you a nice presentation there. I did notice on both voltage and current outputs, somewhere in the lower treble region, maybe in that 2 to 4K region in there, I picked up a little bit of extra energy at times, a little bit of extra shoutiness on different headphones, and I found that all throughout my testing. So now that 4K region is definitely a region where all of us can hear a little bit differently. So it could just be I'm more sensitive to that part of it, but I definitely picked that up. I was okay with it. It's just something I want to note there and kind of tell you guys about. Now, going over to the current output, there is some magic that can happen with that current output of this headphone amplifier. And that magic really is what the current output does. It incorporates the impedance of your headphones. So don't get this confused with high current modes from things like the IHA-6 from Cayin, for instance. When you use high current mode on that, it does something completely different than what this amplifier does. That will kind of take the current and lower the output power to increase the current. This one instead takes your current and takes the impedance of the headphone into account. So at times it can add even more output power to your headphone. I noticed this on something like my ZMF headphones that are 300 ohm headphones. I found not needing to go quite as high on the volume pot just because it's giving it more gain to compensate for that impedance level. Now, it can introduce a little bit of silent white noise at times that you're not really going to hear unless you have low volume music going or something like that. But I got to tell you, I don't care. It was an amazing sound output. All right, so let me tell you about that amazing sound output. So what I found the current mode does, it gives me a little bit more gusto to the low end. It fattens up that sound. I don't want to say thickens. When I say a thickening up sound, I kind of think of, not being able to gaze through to the other side quite as well, like fog or something like that. I see fattened up because it gives some excellent holographic imaging and holographic stage while still giving you a bigger low end and a bigger just punchiness and slam to bass on the low end with that current output mode. Doesn't do it all the time. It did it most of the time on higher impedance headphones, and sometimes I found it to do it on the Planars as well. It does bring that sound stage and close it in a little bit more, and I think it is because it thickens up that low end, so it gives that, you know, impression of just a more intimate stage, but it is not like closed in like this. It's not going to do that. It's not going to take something like an Aria Organic and suddenly make it not a wide sound stage. It just brings it in slightly. But I found myself more times than not preferring the current mode for just that extra bit of flavor that it adds to my music and just made it very engaging. All right, headphone pairings. What can I tell you about that? Well, I paired this up with my Dan Clark Audio E3 from a planar magnetic headphone standpoint. I paired this up with my Aria Organic. What I can tell you about those, my E3, I preferred on really either, but the current output gave me just a little bit more of that low end I talked about. I didn't mind it closing the stage in just a little bit because it made it a very engaging sound. Resolution and everything was just top notch, just the most I've heard ever out of that headphone, to be perfectly honest, with my setup that I have here, and just that attack nature to it as well. Now, I don't want to lose out on the mid-range, or I don't want to not mention the mid-range quality that you get out of this amplifier, because that is excellent and full there as well. And there is just some extra bit of grippiness to string instruments and things like that that you hear on the high end of the treble region that I've honestly never heard before. And that was on both the current and the voltage mode, something I highly enjoyed on the E3 and highly enjoyed on the Organic. Now, one thing I do want to note with this amplifier is if you got a bright headphone or you got a bright IEM, it's not going to take that away, okay? This is going to accentuate things like that. So if it's bright, it's not going to be overly bright, but it's going to let you know that this amplifier is telling you, you got a bright headphone. I got to say, with my Organic, it can be a little bit fatiguing at times, but with this, with the amount of details I got and that fullness of the mid-range and even into the low end, I didn't mind it quite as much because it was so enjoyable to hear things I just haven't quite honestly heard before out of those headphones. All right, so then when I moved on to my dynamic driver headphones, my ZMFs especially, that current mode was like Harry Potter waving his wand, and I don't even know the spell it would be called. Stupendous. No, that's stupid. Just add that fullness down low that I have never experienced before outside of tubes. With something like my O2R Classic, which I definitely prefer with tube amplifiers, I now can say I would prefer it with this amplifier almost more so than a tube amp, just because you don't get that flavoring that you get with tubes out of this, but you still get that big and very spacious fullness of the bass response from this amplifier with the O2R Classic. It was an excellent listen, and the attack nature of it was not lacking at all. The details were not lacking at all. Now, did the stage close in slightly with current mode? Yeah, it did, but I didn't mind that little bit of trade-off for that extra bit of just enjoyment that I got out of the O2R Classic. With my atrium closed, it was the same thing. It just became a little bit more of a closed-in experience, but a little bit more engaging in that low end. And I will say, you know, became sometimes a little bit harsh in that upper mid-range to lower treble region I already talked about. I did pick that up with the atrium closed, but it honestly didn't bother me because I heard things that I hadn't heard before. Birds sung clearer. The clouds were suddenly, okay, now I will tell you, one just very, very magical experience was the Sennheiser 6XX. I just picked it up. I got it on a sale from Drop for like 170 bucks. I paired it up with this amplifier. Wow. I mean, wow. Going in the current mode, it gave that headphone that extra bit of low end that it doesn't have. It's already a more intimate sound, so it didn't really do more to that, I would say. But it just made that headphone extremely enjoyable, and I now understand what they mean why that headphone can scale like nobody's business. It can scale like nobody's business. I mean, we're talking to almost the level of my O2R Classic when I paired it up with this Enleum. That is no joke, guys. That headphone sounded fantastic. Yes, didn't quite have some of those details and things, so I don't want to, you know, knock on the O2 Classic, because yeah, I mean, definitely better. But the 6XX scaled way the hell up and was a fun sound to listen to. Now I also have the FIO FT5 I failed to mention for planars. That sounded excellent on this as well. I mean, no surprise. Again, this expensive of an amp on that headphone is probably overkill, but I don't care. It's overkill. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And then IEMs. I listened to the Dunu Falcon Ultra. I listened to the Kiwi Ears Quintet that I have. Both of those are not highly efficient IEMs, but both of those, I gotta say, I definitely preferred voltage mode or voltage output more than current output, just because of the extra bit of space that you get. And current output's honestly not needed with IEMs in my opinion, but it's something you can definitely mess with and play with if you want to test it out. And I have an unnamed IEM that I don't want to talk about yet that sounded absolutely incredible on this amplifier. I can't wait to talk to you guys about that one, but I can't do it yet. All right, and so before I wrap this up, I don't want to fail to look at some of the drawbacks of this, because I'm sure it's going to be brought up on the comments or others have thought about this. One would be no balanced output, no balanced input. $3,000 amp, come on. Well, I gotta tell you guys, there's a lot of misconceptions in the audiophile community with balanced and unbalanced. Unbalanced is fine. You're getting plenty of power here. You're getting plenty of details and everything else. You're not missing out by not having a balanced output out of this amplifier, in my opinion. Now, if that's a deal breaker for you, I understand. But for me, it doesn't honestly make any sense to incorporate that just to incorporate it if you don't need to. And in this case, you definitely don't need to. The other thing is the price. I mean, yeah, $3,000 is a lot of money for an amplifier, but this is portable. It's something you can take with you on the go. Granted, you're not going to get a ton of uptime with it, with up to 5 hours. It's still plenty, and it's a lot of fun to use something like my RU7 for a DAC or the Mojo 2 for a DAC. You know, both devices are things you can take with you on the go and have a portable unit that you can just take in transit with you and get this kind of sound quality out of it. Yes, it's going to be a drawback to some, but man, I mean, that really kind of justifies some of that pricing there. Not to mention the fact that the materials are just top notch, and they, you know, took nothing away from how much they put into this amplifier from that standpoint. All right, guys. I want to give one last thank you to Enleum, because I have really, really enjoyed this amplifier. This is just an excellent marvel of an amp that provides details, fullness, engagement, gives me everything I love about my headphones, and adds the extra 5% that you might be searching for. This is it. Then you can take it with you on the go. So why the hell not? Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If so, please smash that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and join my Patreon. I would highly appreciate that. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.